My name is Neil Patel, and I help companies generate more revenue through digital marketing. Entrepreneur Magazine said I was the #1 marketer in the world, and they also said I created one of the 100 most brilliant companies. I started my first website at the age of 16. I took all the money that I earned from working at an amusement park, and I paid a marketing firm. The marketing firm provided no results, and I quickly learned that I wasn't alone. Out of my frustration and from being broke, I had no choice but to learn marketing. My first client was a power supply manufacturer. I helped them generate another $25 million in sales, and from that point, I realized the power of marketing. I helped everyone that I could, and I built my reputation by being honest and over-delivering. I've helped companies like Google, NBC, Viacom, General Motors, eBay, but nothing's more satisfying than helping small business owners succeed. I founded 4 multi-million-dollar companies, and I've learned all the mistakes that you should avoid. I've written about them on Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc., Fast Company, and even on my own blogs. It's so awesome to know that colleges from all around the world are teaching my material in their classroom. Over the years, I've received awards from the President of the United States, the House of Representatives, and the United Nations. People believe marketing is expensive and difficult. Fortunately, that's not true. There is a formula. Even if you don't have a technical bone in your body, you can get results. And my mission is to share this formula with you. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for coming today. And we're going to have an amazing presentation. We have a great cast from NP Digital, and we're going to be talking about paid advertising. You know, a lot of people are wasting their time on paid ads, and it's not working for most companies. And we're going to break down the new approach. So let's dive right in. My name is Neil Patel. I'm the co-founder of NP Digital. We're a global ad agency. You know, we've been around in business for roughly, I think this will be our 7th year now. We work from companies of all sizes around the globe. And today I have the privilege of having Sherry and Chris with us. Sherry, do you want to give a quick introduction on yourself? And then Chris, you can go next.
Absolutely. Thanks, Neil. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Sherry Chen. I'm an Associate Director of Paid Media Strategy here at NPD. I've been at NPD for 3 years, but for the last 9 years, I've worked with clients on creating full funnel media plans that drive results and maximize ROI. And I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Howdy, folks. My name is Chris Moreno. I oversee the NPD paid media team here at NP Digital. That's all things paid search, paid social, programmatic, and any sort of biddable piece of media that we could buy online. Looking forward to discussing some of the strategies that we implement for our clients on an enterprise level and how might that apply to clients of all sizes and businesses of all sizes. So looking forward to sharing.
Cool. So as I mentioned, we're NP Digital. We have a lot of awards, 1,000+ people. We're in quite a few different countries. The reason I want to bring this up is just keep in mind today when we break down some of the strategies and tactics that we're seeing work, just remember we've gotten a lot of awards for these strategies and tactics. So if you just take some of them, implement it within your marketing, you should be much better off. 78.2% of marketers can't make their ads profitable. Just think about that for a minute. That's a really big number. The last I checked, over $600 billion a year is being spent on digital ad spend. For 78.2% of marketers to not be able to make their ads profitable, there's something wrong with that approach in what they're doing. And the reason being is if $600+ billion is being spent on digital ads globally, that number is massive. It wouldn't be that big if people couldn't get it to work. So although the majority can't make it to work, a smaller percentage can, and they're the ones that are spending the majority of the dollars. As you can see here, we surveyed 13,350 marketers about their advertising, and even though 78.2% couldn't make their marketing work, 21.8% said their paid ads are paying off. You just got to figure out how to be in that 21.8%. And you got to ask yourself, so are paid ads a waste of time and money? They're not really a waste of time and money. You just got to figure out how to make it work. One more, Chris. So let's dive a little bit deeper. As you can see here, paid ads, whether it was from the old school days, which wasn't digital, of people printing brochures, putting them in within magazines, billboards, it was very effective. You know, people have been doing advertising for a very, very long time. This industry is not new, not one bit. Some of the holding companies in the marketing age have been around for roughly 100 years. Maybe some of them have been around for more than 100 years. It's a big market, right? Before digital, there was all this offline and it worked well. Again, though, people were doing offline ads back in the day. Some people were able to get them to work, some people weren't. And we want to show you how to be in that 21-ish% category of making your advertising work. All channels get super competitive. And this is something that you need to know. And before we can dive into the strategies, you may end up finding a channel that's producing amazing results, but it doesn't always last. For example, here you're seeing an image of the first banner ad. This is the first banner ad ever on the internet, and it appeared on a website called hotwire.com back in 1994. And it had a staggering 44% click-through rate. Just think about that. When you run banner ads right now, you're probably not even at a 0.1%. Back then, the first one, 44%. Andrew Chen, who's at A16Z, Mark Andreessen's venture fund and Ben Horowitz venture fund, he also worked at growth at Uber, once had a saying that he put out on the web years and years ago, all marketing channels eventually go to shit. And excuse my language. It doesn't necessarily mean that a marketing channel doesn't work. It gets more competitive over time and the results dwindle, right? When Google Ads first came about, it was much easier to get an ROI. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just harder to get an ROI. And the cost of online advertising is rising, which is making it even worse. Google search CPCs were up 9%, and advertising on Google search spends in the US was up 17% year over year. Ads are just continually getting more expensive, which makes it harder to produce an ROI. And when speaking of SEO getting the free results, which companies should still do, it's also becoming really competitive. Roughly 4.6 billion pieces of content are being published each day. And I know Google doesn't necessarily always have 10 results on a home page, but people aren't clicking past page 1, 2, or 3, right? Majority of clicks happen on page 1. So if more people keep producing content, it's also going to get more competitive. And a lot of younger people are turning to TikTok and Instagram for searching. So this just makes it harder and harder, not just for paid, but also all the organic channels as well. You also have zero click as an issue. It's been happening quite a bit. Not all queries have ads. Some of them don't even have results above the fold, and that's okay. Google's goal is to improve the experience. I know a lot of you guys are afraid of what's going to happen with paid ads with AI overviews, but Google's continually trying to improve the experience. And according to Danny Sullivan from Google, each and every single year since existence, Google has driven more traffic to websites than the previous year. This is organically, right? They're not just going to crush paid and crush organic, especially when they're a multi-trillion-dollar company. You're not going to risk your market cap by just crushing paid ads. It'll still exist. And you also have people searching on different platforms now. We did a survey, and over time, we found that majority of people used to search on search engines, but then it started to be where people are also searching for social media or on social media platforms, and they're also searching on these platforms like ChatGPT. Even though it's not technically a search engine, they're using it as a search engine to answer their quote-unquote questions. And you're going to see more and more of this. Now, when looking at this chart, keep in mind, it doesn't mean that just because Google's going down, it doesn't mean that they're getting less traffic. Some people use Google and they use social media and chatbots to perform the same task. Just like how many of you use Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the list goes on, versus only using one social network. Most people, the real issue that we see in purchases and paid ads is most companies believe that it's really simple. They see ad, they click an offer, and they buy. It doesn't really work like that. This is how it actually works. People see an ad, they get distracted, they do many different things, they go check social media the next day, they may see your product again or your service or your company. They may go on Amazon, click some buttons, add it to cart, don't buy anything, get some emails, maybe they click on open it, don't buy it. Next day, a friend says something to them like, oh yeah, I was just checking out that product. Let me go and buy it. People go through many different journeys. It's a really complex funnel. It's omni-channel. And if you're not omni-channel, you're not going to win.
So let's talk paid ads. As Neil alluded to, the journey is pretty complex for any and all purchasers across any and all types of clients and services and business models out there. So Sherry and I are going to just talk a little bit about how you could apply some of these strategies to that. But things to notate is we will be talking about paid as it's as Neil said, it's not going out anywhere. One thing that we know is as the 13,000 plus marketers who were surveyed, that still comes back. That paid ads is what drives the most sort of revenue compared to other channels like SEO or influencer marketing or email marketing. There's a lot of tactics out there that companies and individuals deploy to try to get results, and paid ads still comes in that number one spot. So it's something that you have to take advantage of because it's going to continue to evolve, but also consumer behaviors are going to evolve. And that as we use multiple different websites and apps and features across consuming content, what happens is you're going to continue back to search for something to do research. And as Neil said, the search engine result page, or the SERP, is going to continue to evolve and change. The experience for what Google's trying to produce out there is going to make the best experience for that user, and it's going to be unique to each individual user. So as an announcement 2 or 3 weeks ago at Google Marketing Live, they're going to start incorporating ads into AI summaries. They're going to be above the response, below the response. They'll be considered sponsored posts within the result page. So you're going to be incorporating things into the continuing evolving space of search. But thinking outside of search is also how to expand outside of search, right? And display is another tactic in which you can make your media strategy a little bit more omni-funnel and actually start approaching things and getting more visibility outside of search to influence users to search. There's a lot of products and features within Google Ads in particular, whether it's Performance Max or demand gen campaigns or YouTube ads that incorporate a little bit of all that upper funnel that we'll talk about as well. One thing to note is in terms of identifying when you should activate and where to activate, you shouldn't be activating across all paid social channels. Just because there is TikTok and Twitter and Pinterest and LinkedIn and Facebook and Snapchat, you have to do the research to understand where your audience lies, where they're spending the most eyeball time on the apps, and find out what best age segment might be within those apps. So for instance, if you're trying to go after a mom, children in household 25 to 30 years old, they're more likely probably going to spend more time on Pinterest with an influence to purchase rather than Snapchat and TikTok. TikTok is on the rise though, and is very much competing with basically all the apps in which the consumer behaviors are shifting. But as Neil mentioned before, the ad business is growing. Year-over-year growth has continued to showcase for the last 2 decades, and that's not going to change. The investments in these paid strategies are just going to have to get more advanced and more smart with those investments, and to make them profitable in order to win. And those are the things we'll get into a lot more detail here in this sort of new approach, but we just say more optimized approach to paid ads. And it starts with thinking about it as a funnel. A lot of people, a lot of marketers start immediately with paid search because they know the intent is there. Consumers are searching for an exact product, a specific business, or something exactly in mind. But there's a lot more that can be done upper funnel and in the consideration phase that we want to discuss with you all. And why that's important is back to the survey. The 13,000 people that were surveyed, 21% say they're, 21% that are winning in which they're making their investments. The results came and are speaking to themselves. The investments coming from optimizing and investing in full funnel media tactics to Email drip campaigns. Other tactics that they're taking advantage of are testing your copy and online landing page optimization. So we're going to kind of go into which ones kind of bubbled up to the top of the results and how we apply these, some for clients in particular.
All right. So some of those smarter strategies that Chris were mentioning was the importance of that optimized funnel. So like Chris and Neil have described, there are so many touch points and ways to reach users as media consumption habits have changed. So if you aren't thinking about every step of that customer journey after the paid ad click, there's a pretty good chance that you're losing out on revenue. You're losing out on potential customers at every stage. You never end up helping them reach that final conversion or whatever your business goal might be. So by optimizing the funnel, we need to be thinking about ways to identify those bottlenecks, refine your messaging, and ultimately drive those greater conversion rates. The real lift isn't necessarily from spending more money on paid ads, but it's fine-tuning your existing campaigns and working on the rest of that user journey. The paid ads just drive people to your site, but you still need to convert them by optimizing your landing pages and other touch points down funnel. You really want that user customer journey to be smooth, informative, and frictionless, have reminders for cross-selling and upselling throughout the customer journey, have that strong language that incentivizes them to buy. So as Chris and Neil have talked about previously, that decision-making journey isn't as cut and dry as it used to be since we have so much information at our fingertips. Users could be exposed to streaming ads on CTV devices, start their search on Google or on TikTok, watch videos on YouTube, be retargeted with ads, and multiple channels and messages end up contributing to that final buying decision. So as marketers, this means we need to diversify our media mix and measure success differently across these different platforms. There's different levels of intent that users have when they're consuming content throughout their day and across their journey. When we're looking at awareness or those top of funnel tactics, we're trying to drive efficient reach at scale. We want to attract your audience and spark that initial interest. As we go on to consideration or those middle of funnel strategies, we want to nurture your leads with valuable content, personalized messaging, and calls to action that move them closer to a decision. When we move on to conversion or those bottom of funnel, paid search strategies, conversion objectives, website optimization tactics, we want to provide that seamless buying process, address customer concerns, anticipate questions they might have, and provide incentives for them to convert. And finally, looking at retention, how can we nurture and retain your high value customers? Don't give them a reason to leave and make sure that they are with you and they're brand loyal. So you have spent all this effort driving traffic to your landing page, but once you've earned that user's click, what do we have that awaits them? You only really have a few seconds to grab their attention before they could bounce. Your landing page is your first impression. And I know I'm not alone when I say that. If I'm swiping up on an Instagram ad and I see a page is not loading with enough time, I'll get impatient and I'll move on to whatever else I was doing. So with your landing page, you need to optimize it for speed, clarity, and action. And those fleeting seconds could be the difference between conversions and success versus lost attention. So some of the things that you should focus on include having a concise headline that conveys your value to the viewer, having visual appeal with high quality images or videos that grab attention without sacrificing that important page load speed. And it's important to remember that people are skimming. So you should keep your copy short and you should use visual text design differences like bolding or different colors to highlight your key benefits. And finally, you should have clear call to actions that align with your desired end goals for your business. These are some industry benchmarks that we've gathered on landing page performance. On the left, you'll see that the average paid search landing page conversion rate is about 2% across all verticals. But it's important to gather your own baseline data. You can read case studies and, read articles, attend webinars, but only you know what's best for your business and what nuances to consider. You don't know what your competition is bidding on or what their platform conversion goals are. So competing against yourself is the best measurement of success. And as you look to integrate things like CRO, conversion rate optimization, you can see an increase in your ROI. A good starting point is to look at your ads with a high click-through rate, but low conversion rate and high cost per acquisition. And if these are driving sufficient traffic to start testing, that's a good starting point to implement CRO strategies.
And keep in mind when you're doing this, this is also going to vary. I know this says PPC landing page, the term PPC, maybe referring to paid search, but this is going to vary across different conversion actions or tactics across the funnel. So if you're activating a display campaign or sort of what channel you're activating on, our click-through rates vary drastically across Snapchat versus TikTok versus paid search versus Meta. And then within Meta itself, the inventory is going to change. So a lot of it is going to depend on whether it's in Reels or in Feed. Those are going to have varying levels of click-through rates. So you're going to want to benchmark, as Sherry mentioned, across your test on what specific campaign objective on what platform.
Definitely. Yeah, keep that in mind as we go through some of these strategies. So in that survey, some of the common strategies that marketers said that they use in profitable paid campaigns include multiple payment options, multi-step checkout. There is a balance with this one. You need to break it into easier manageable steps to lead to those fewer abandoned carts or forms, but it also needs to be balanced against simpler forms for simpler purchases. So again, like Chris said, performance is not a monolith. You have to kind of evaluate what's best for your business needs. Other tactics include adding descriptive long copy on landing pages, answering some of those anticipated questions, removing those barriers to conversion. Using influencers on landing pages is also critical, especially if you're using influencers in your paid media campaigns or even on your organic channels. Having that visual connection point between what they see in the ad and on the landing page is always helpful. And then finally, testing, A/B testing. Going into some of that testing, something that we always like to recommend to our clients is to take big swings when A/B testing. It's better to have that statistically significant negative result in a test rather than wasting your resources testing smaller components that might not significantly move the needle in performance. And looking at some other best practices, you can test variations of headlines, call to actions, images, and layouts, seeing what's driving the most conversions. You can look at the call to action itself, whether it's the wording or the placement on the page. You can use tools like Crazy Egg and other heat mapping tools to actually look at user behavior, where they're falling off in their interactions on the site, on your landing page, to be able to isolate where to test different placements for higher engagement. You can use testimonials. That's a signal to users that this has worked for others and it can work for them. Make sure to keep optimizing for mobile first in mind, since we know so much web traffic is mobile dominated. And like Chris said before, you can continuously test and refine your landing pages across different programs, across different platforms, because in our experience for client testing, you could test a certain type of form for, an education program for one of the lines of businesses that you have, but that could be a totally different result for something else within a different product within your business. So like Chris said, keeping those benchmarks across the board so that you're not just flatlining and applying everything, continuously testing and iterating is going to be what's key to increase those conversion rates. So going back to the ads themselves, we also wanted to talk about persona-based ads, where we can really tap into user motivations and build trust by speaking directly to their pain points and creating an emotional connection with your brand. Writing persona-based ad copy and targeting different personas with different ads can increase their effectiveness. But we also want to note here that overall, it's better to work with the ad platform algorithms rather than to try to outsmart them through over segmentation. So like Chris said, it's a balance of audience research and personalized content creation, along with giving the platforms enough signals to dictate delivery and to find your audience most cost effectively than marketers trying to manipulate the system. I have lots of examples of clients onboarding, and one of the first things that we look at are opportunities to consolidate. Going from hyper-segmented campaigns to broader and consolidated campaigns helped improve CPAs and reduce competition, competing against ourselves and driving up costs artificially.
Yeah, and we're not trying to deviate away from creating those individual sort of call to actions that might resonate with certain audience groups, but really think about the pains and the gains. What is the pains that they're going through that your product might solve? What do they get in terms of value from the products or services that you're offering? And then make sure that's the leading indicator that's putting within your copy and the visual representations of your ads. And then just giving it a lot of variation to ingest within the headlines or descriptions within Google. You get 15 different headline opportunities and 4 different descriptions. Within Meta, you have combination of different assets you could upload. Just make sure you're putting variation of all those within the platforms for it to then dictate what's the best messaging or what's the best opportunity to serve to the individual users.
And if you aren't already focused on personalizing digital advertising, you may not be alone, since only 32% of marketers are doing so. But you are missing out on those increased click-through rates. So you want to show, like Chris said, show your audience that you care about them and have something valuable to offer to make your ads more appealing. Making your ads more appealing, again, does start with that audience research, whether that's analyzing your CRM data, sending out surveys, or using AI to assess your customer personas. And by establishing those pains and gains for your different audiences, you can personalize those call to actions for what matters most to them. And like Chris said, there's AI tools that are increasingly being added to platforms that you can use to create dynamic ad copy. And Google and Meta specifically are adding tools where it can help you craft and refine ad copy variants. That's a really good starting point for inspiration, leveraging generative AI tools, and then having that human element of review to review and run these ads based on what's being generated by machine learning, anticipating that potential performance. We do want to keep an eye on the future, even though it was announced recently that Google has, again, delayed cookie deprecation to 2025. We do want to be thinking about some areas to future-proof your strategy. First-party data is more important than ever. Website behavior, purchase history, email interactions, all these are examples of first-party data that can help paint a valuable picture of your users. Contextual targeting with publishers, working with them to display your ads on relevant websites and content. It kind of ensures that you reach people who are already researching and reading up on what you offer. Server-side tagging is activated on the website server instead of the user's device. Zero-party data is gained through gated content, games, quizzes, loyalty programs, all ways that you can gather insights directly from your users by providing that value in exchange for information. And then finally, as we've been saying, AI can help analyze available data and predict user behavior through lookalike modeling. Another effective strategy, going back to the ads themselves, is video. And that is definitely a critical component of the paid campaigns that we run for our clients at NPD. Just as an example, when I was recently looking up how to install a new latch for my car trunk, I didn't go to Google, and Neil referenced this earlier, but I went to YouTube, I went to TikTok instead of Google. I wanted that visual step-by-step guide. I had my phone in one hand and the tools in another. I was watching the video all the way through, then I was pausing at those critical steps. This is a strategy that can apply to your products or services as well, because video can generate the shares on social media, generate that engagement, build that critical emotional connection that we've been talking about, help the user more easily imagine themselves using your brand, your product, your service. And then having that video on landing pages and using UGC can provide that vote of confidence for the user to really anticipate what they might be looking for and provide that resource for them, provide that benefit for them before you even ask for any hard sell.
And we're going to talk about that in a couple of slides in terms of cross-channel strategies and just being more strategic across the funnel and across channels. One of those things is as we identify what your consumer, what your clients, what your potential customers are searching for, and how do you provide them the answer, not necessarily just in written form to rank organically, but how can we answer those questions in the form of video and actually tell them a story through that process, and then incorporating that sort of answer to their question, to their problem, to their need in video is where we apply this to a top of funnel sort of media activation to introduce your product, your brand, building authority and gaining sort of a potential opportunity to have them turn into a customer. So we'll be thinking about it from a keyword research. What does the data tell us? What are they searching for? What do they have questions on? And then how can that influence your video strategy and your video production?
Definitely. And like Chris said before, you don't necessarily need to run on every single platform if you know where your audience is over indexing. So you can take a look at your own website data from GA4. You can use tools and industry research to help determine where your audience is spending the most time. That way you can plan the right media mix to meet them where they are, whether that's YouTube, through social, or programmatic. Purchasing video inventory programmatically means that you're purchasing the audience rather than the specific program or the specific channel. So you can meet your audience really where they are. Some of the tips for in creating engaging videos, aside from starting with that keyword research to determine what are those popular topics that people are talking about and have questions about, are making sure that you're hooking viewers early. You know, we said that the landing page is a first impression. So is your video ad if you're using those formats. You want to tell that compelling story and optimize for mobile. Adding captions is huge. I know that it does take additional resources, but as an example, we ran a test on YouTube in a previous client experience of mine with captions and without. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a word for word, script for what is being said, but sometimes just having that text overlay to convey that value. You don't know where users are consuming video, whether they're in a busy subway or a waiting room where they are consuming content with sound off. They don't have headphones. So you need to make sure that even if they're watching the video without sound, they are still able to understand what you are conveying. It helps with accessibility as well across the board. Having that clear CTA that we've been talking about, having a better understanding of what end goal you want your user to take, and then leveraging UGC is a really good way of being able to tap into the organic content that's already being communicated about, building that community trust and working with your existing consumers, getting their consent to feature their content in your videos, to really, again, be that pinpoint of relatability and allow your potential customer to see how it's working for your existing customers.
And one thing to note is, as it alludes to the chart here, it doesn't have to be a huge production. Actually, consumers want this sort of lo-fi, more organic, coming directly from you. Get yourself a tripod and start discussing how you created your company or your business or your product or your service. And they just want to see what went into it from a very organic look and feel coming directly from you, the founder, or you, the employee, that actually resonates better than some of the more higher quality, bigger production content that you see in the feed.
And the reason Chris is talking about lo-fi content here is the big takeaway is lo-fi content, when someone just busts out their phone and they're recording, it's more authentic. Something that's highly produced is less relatable, and we're not just seeing that with high production quality content that the engagement isn't as high, but we're also seeing the conversions not as great. We're seeing with lo-fi content, you're getting more engagement and more conversions due to the authenticity.
And there's still a place for hi-fi content. There's still inventory in which we purchase and where that comes into play and what the objective of that inventory and that content is doing. But in most cases, for what we're trying to activate on the masses, that lo-fi content, it's quick. It allows you to be more agile, allows you to be more responsive to things that are happening and trending. So just keep it in mind. I would always bet on the lo-fi first before you start making investments in that high production stuff.
What, and a funny example of this, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, like, consumers are becoming more savvy to what is being shown, and they don't necessarily want to be shown ads. Like Chris said, there is a time and a place for a highly stylized, polished brand shoot, but there's also the desire to make it feel like you're not being advertised to, you're just being spoken to, like you're on a FaceTime with your friend and you're getting a word of mouth recommendation.
Yeah, and also check out the old Coinbase Super Bowl ad. It crashed their website. It was just really basic of just being like, hey, I think it was a QR code. Scan this QR code, go to our website. And that was it. Wasn't amazing quality. Crushed their website. Did really well for them.
Interesting year.
Finally, one last note on video. There's a lot of different ways you can personalize the video content through dynamic ads. Example being, if you're a location-based business, in your videos, use background shots of your storefront or your campus or whatever it is. Have that sense of familiarity and personalize it to where the user might be viewing your video if you're using a geo-targeting strategy there. And In addition to that, you can also retarget the user based on the site interactions that they've taken on your website, having that personalized message to align and show the user that you're trying to meet them where they are and have that stronger call to action based on what they've already told you about themselves.
Awesome. And tip number 5, as Sherry mentioned, we talk about full funnel. We're talking about what you need to do in terms of creating the right ad copy, landing page optimization to make sure that post-click, that investment of what you do to get them to the landing page, to try to get them to convert. There's other tactics like creating email drip campaigns. So if we're going to make the investment to drive the traffic to the landing page, we want to be able to monitor and measure what they do on that website, across your website, and then determine what are the triggers, what are the things we can put in place to try to capitalize and capture as much data we can, to then use another tactic like email campaigns to send them a follow-up message, to send them a reminder message. And one thing for email drip campaigns, in case you haven't sort of used them in the past, what are they? First, it's basically an automated email campaign. It's a sequence of events. It's pre-written emails to determine and set up who might be your potential customer that eventually might lead to a conversion or lead to an action over time, but maybe they're just not ready to buy. What are those actions that happen on their website that you want to then send them a follow-up message, decide what those triggers are beforehand. You want to be able to get them to capture that sort of email on the website. So there's things that you can put in place. Maybe it's identify what that email is, or if they added something to the cart, but then abandoned. Those are the triggers that you want to identify to then use an email software campaign that offers this sort of functionality already within the software. Nurturing leads is good for business. And this is across the board. Businesses using automated lead nurturing tools see a 10 to 20% increase in sales opportunities. And those drip nurture campaigns, if someone comes to your website, doesn't necessarily download the white paper, goes and explores a couple of pages, but then there might be a pop-up for an email capture. Those are the actions that we want to make sure we continue to be able to follow them with these sort of campaigns post-interaction on your site. That then turns into your first-party data. They might come back later on and do a search campaign in paid search, and then activate and sign up for a webinar, right? And eventually might become a client. But as that indication of that consumer who made a touch base with your brand goes into the Salesforce ID, as is in there, it's considered a lead potentially. Companies that excel at lead nurturing are actually generating 50% more sales based on how they actually monitor their lead to a marketing qualified lead to an SQL. A pro tip on this approach is actually a lot of platforms like Google and Meta allow you to put that status change, that lead status change, back into Google, back into Meta to determine, okay, this person actually became a lead, attended the webinar, downloaded this white paper, spoken to a sales team member. They're now a sales qualified lead at this sales value. That interaction, that lead status change is what we actually start optimizing our campaigns through machine learning to say we want more actions like that to happen from these types of consumers. So you change what you're optimizing for leads or phone calls at one point, but now we're optimizing to sales qualified leads and more qualified behaviors on the website. So if you haven't integrated your CRM directly into the ad platforms, that is a next evolution of a strategy campaign that you can get your ads to become more profitable. Then the action. Neil does a great job at this in terms of how you try to capture as much first-party data once you get that user to your site, whether it's through pop-up discounts, newsletter signups, downloadable lead magnets. There's things that you can enable on your website to make sure you try to capture and captivate that first-party data so you can have these sort of nurturing campaigns post-interactions. And then last but not least, as we talked about earlier, how do you incorporate this all across the board and actually leveraging cross-channel efforts to coordinate? This takes a big initiative because in some cases, these could be different departments across an organization. These could be different people within a team who have different skill sets, and setting up the collaboration to how to leverage the powers of what each line of sight of each individual who's managing these is what we can kind of tap into and show how we can kind of collaborate a little bit more. But it's very clear that we can achieve a higher ROI if you just lead with more of a cross-channel strategy on the upfront. So planning campaigns should be starting initially from the centralized sort of approach. And actually, before you start thinking about how much money I apply to paid search or what sort of campaign and creative shoots do I need for social, you want to be able to see what the data tells you first. So start leveraging your first party data and get a holistic view of your audience. As Sherry mentioned, there's ways to identify what platforms they're on. You can see where they index, over-index, where the consumer behaviors and consumption behaviors are across the web. And you start to then identify where should you be investing your dollars across the platform. But it starts with that centralized approach to the audience first. But then from there, we want to be able to understand striking distance. Thinking about SEO keywords, you have your top organic keywords that you're trying to rank for. You have some that are in striking distance. They might be long tail keywords, it might be short tail keywords, it might be pretty competitive. But if we know we're within striking distance, those are the keywords that maybe we have an active play within the paid search space. And we actually want to boost the content that is leading to that blog post that's close to ranking. That's the content we put on paid social to get more visibility, more shares, more social engagement signals. So start to think about where you could apply some of these strategies across tactics into the media plan to then allow for a higher output. Some examples of cross-channel strategies are within paid search, you could drive traffic to specific landing pages. But if you think about it, the content marketing team is also trying to get visibility to net new content, refurbished content. And maybe it's that content that we start to import into our site links within paid ads, within the paid search space. Also, as I mentioned before, it's the blog content that we can create a series of blog posts or a series of video posts that we turn written content into video content to answer a question, and we use it in our paid social top of funnel brand awareness campaigns. It's the retargeting sort of scenario. Once we get the traffic to the website, they interact, that incorporates back into your drip campaign. So the investment you made in that paid click to get them to your website should influence and build your email marketing list. It should build your retargeting and remarketing list for the paid side. So think about it from multi-use. The investments of the dollars that you make sending traffic, what else can you do with that traffic if you didn't capitalize on that first click? And then speaking of clicks, this is one of the things to round it all out is, as Neil said, there's a lot of money being invested across the global media in a given year, but a lot of it actually is generated by click fraud. And the smart marketers out there are using technologies and tools to try to avoid invalid click activity so that your investment actually goes towards real users across the web. $84 billion are being invested. $84 billion is the amount of money marketers are losing on click fraud each year on a global scale. And thinking about it from what invalid click activity does and the ecosystem of invalid traffic, there's multiple forms from crawlers and scrapers and click farms and proxies. So there's a lot of things that you could do to enable and try to prevent this, but also there's some technology and partners that you could tap into if this is a bigger problem based on your media investment. The countries that have the biggest issues with click fraud is North America, where most of the media dollars are invested to date, but fast follow that is China, Western Europe, Central Eastern Europe. So it's prone to across the globe, but the US gets the biggest sort of brunt of the click fraud issue. Channels in which this kind of takes place, mostly mobile, but really it's across the display and programmatic inventory of the web that we see most of this come from. And that could be video inventory, display inventory, native inventory, typically mostly programmatically, and then across mobile apps as well. So things you could do to prevent losing money. If you haven't already, using a partner like Anora or Traffic Guard, Optics, or Check. Check is the largest sort of partner in the industry, and they can allow you to do bot detection or user validation of real authentic users. A lot of the technology out there for most of these ad fraud vendors immediately start to create IP tracking, address tracking. So they actually start blocking known click farms or known IP addresses that are basically invalid clicks. The first step though, if you don't actually have a partner in mind, is actually enabling reCAPTCHA on your website. So if you're going to go to a landing page to capture information from a user and you want to make sure you try to authenticate and validate, is enable reCAPTCHA as the first win. There's other initiations like actually making sure you identify the right geo targets and actually excluding specific countries that you shouldn't be activating in. But there's a lot of partners out there. One of them that we use in particular for more of the enterprise clients is Check, which is their bot detection program. Definitely helps us save a good substantial amount of money throughout the year. So keep it in mind. If you have some questions on partners, we're more than happy to answer those for
you. The big thing that you guys need to keep in mind is paid advertising isn't as simple as a lot of organizations and platforms, make it out to seem. It's not as simple as using some AI technology and, letting Performance Max do its thing and you're going to get miraculous results. A lot of it has to do with all the little things that add up. For example, continue tweaking your campaigns and making sure people don't see the same old creatives over and over again. From optimizing your landing pages and optimizing to a LTV of a customer, right? To keeping all that data in mind that we presented, whether it's lo-fi content or knowing what platforms people are using based on the different demographics, to even optimizing for conversions, not just on the front end, but on the back end, right? All these little things add up and it's how you win. For example, if you don't prevent click fraud, that could be 2, 3, 4% of your budget. If I remember Chris Moreno telling me a story on how we had a client who was using Performance Max and they were losing tons of money. But what we did with Performance Max is instead of just feeding it conversions, we looked at which conversions are great and which ones are bad. And we only started feeding the system good conversions, and the rest of the quote unquote crap conversions, we didn't feed it back to the system, and it helped optimize for what we are looking for our ideal customer, right? But it's a lot of these little things that add up. And it's funny with tracking getting more complex over time, with there being so many platforms, and even with this technology, paid advertising isn't as simple as just clicking a few buttons and leveraging the tech and you're off and running. It's doing all the things right. It's all the little things that add up. It's taking an omni-channel approach. And if you do it all together and they're working together and you're taking your learnings from one channel and bringing it over to other channels, you're much more likely to succeed in the long run. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it because paid advertising can scale really fast. And also, if you want to get help with maximizing your ROI, especially when it comes to paid ads or SEO or cross-channel marketing or anything out there, scan that QR code. You can hit us up. We would love to work with you. Or you can just go to npdigital.com. We also have an up-and-coming webinar on July 2nd. It's called SEO Strategies That Always Work. Make sure you scan the QR code. We hope that you'll be there. And we're going to be breaking down some strategies that'll work, even with all the changes that are happening with AI and the AI overviews. Just a quick preview on this. We looked at our clients that are getting majority of their search traffic from the United States. So we're mainly looking at the US because of the AI overviews rolled out in the US. And we saw an increase in overall clicks. Impressions did decrease, but overall clicks going to websites did increase. And we'll break down the strategies that we've been using that have been working, years ago, as well as today, even with the AI rollouts. All right, so let's dive into some questions. Colin, what do we have?
Lots of good questions. Thanks so much, Sherry, Chris, Neil. What is omni-channel? I saw that twice, but then the follow-up question to that is how can you track the customer through the omni-channel experience? Neil, I don't know if you want to take a stab at this first, but
Sure.
That came up a couple times.
So there's two different types. There's multi-channel and there's omni-channel. And I want to go over both because a lot of people get them confused. Being on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Google, etc., and then just looking at them separately and having them work separately, that's not omni-channel, that's multi-channel. But being on all these channels and having the campaigns work together where you're taking your learnings from Instagram and TikTok and using it, or having similar promotions or the same promotions, and the people working on the different channels are aligned on the same objective, and each channel is helping each other grow. That's more of an omni channel, right? But just being on the channels and them working separately, that's more so multi-channel. And as for traffic or tracking, you can look at many different things. You can do, last touch, first touch, multi-attribution. It really depends on the business and the business type. Like the tracking that you're going to do for B2B SaaS enterprise, when you're selling something for $1 million plus and the sales cycle is more than a year, the tracking and attribution is going to be very different than selling something for $2 online, where a lot of people will just see something and buy right away.
And most ad platforms integrate now with the CDP. So if you haven't invested in a customer data platform, that allows us to be multi-channel to turn it into omni-channel, because once you connect that sort of first-party data to an identifier that's unique to these individuals, that's what we can then start to track them across the web and across the different interactions and platforms once they come back to the website. So it starts to patch them along as they either turn into a customer or they are a customer, and they start thinking about it from a lifetime value scenario.
Great add-on there, Chris. Thank you so much. Several PMax questions. So Chris, Sherry, are you guys seeing depleted results recently with Performance Max campaigns? We've seen a massive drop of impressions for every dollar spent. Like that comment was probably 3 or 4 times. What are we seeing just in general with PMax?
Not for my campaigns and clients personally. I know that we have been doing some testing to refine Performance Max where, there's new features as this ad format continues to be pushed by Google since it is so AI driven. It's a bit of a black box with performance, but, we're working on excluding brand from Performance Max to get a true evaluation of its performance outside of potentially, taking on some of that brand traffic, depending on how the auctions are playing out with our brand standard campaigns versus PMax. So I can't necessarily answer this question directly in terms of depleted results, but I think it was mentioned earlier in the webinar, with any new ad format, as it continuously gets adopted and refined and more so adopted by more advertisers, there is that potential for increased competition and potential for drop-offs in performance. And, there's always those glory days that we think back on, the early days of Snapchat, the early days of Facebook, Instagram, pre-Meta, and how that iterates over time, just as the platforms and ad formats are adapted more widely. Chris, anything else to add?
Yeah, so with some of the new features, we have seen in some instances where if you're trying to optimize to a net new customer, meaning you've already integrated your first-party data into Google and either excluding, and you're trying to go after net new customers, there can be some sort of limitations in scale that happens, but it just depends on how much volume and play in terms of budgets. But typically when we see any sort of performance indicator that it's dropping in delivery or dropping in conversion, it's because you probably don't have enough ad asset groups and you actually haven't created enough creative iterations to test a lot of different combinations. So in some cases, you should have upwards of 3 or 4 ad asset groups within PMax and making sure that you have different audiences aligned to each of them. But creative is the number one controller with PMax. So if you're not constantly updating and refreshing and actually testing different variations of creative through the ad asset groups, I would start there.
Awesome. Another great add-on, Chris. Thank you. Sherry, not to put you on the spot, but a question came through when you were talking about landing pages. How do you balance landing page ad relevancy for Google search ads and user experience in value language? Is there some sort of a trick there? Does that question make sense? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think the question is asking about how to optimize your search campaigns to not only help with the Google Ads platform for ad rank and quality score, but also to the user, because ultimately the user wants that positive experience with those clear value props that we've been talking about on their landing pages. And some ways to balance that are just making sure your keywords are very naturally integrated on the landing page, not necessarily keyword stuffing, but making sure they're satisfying Google's relevancy requirements by having those keywords that are associated with your ad group to the landing pages in the headlines and the subheadlines and body copy. Really focusing on that value to the user, crafting those compelling call to actions that we talked about. And ultimately, it all comes together with conversion rate optimization and A/B testing those landing pages, really looking at that front end performance of those higher CTRs but lower conversion rates, and identifying areas to test and iterate on so that you can continuously improve your performance and not just rest on your laurels, rest on the landing page performance, but always be in a mindset of testing and improving.
Always be testing, ABT. Neil, I think you mentioned, or maybe it was on a slide, talk to us a little bit about Crazy Egg and how Crazy Egg can help with all of this stuff. What does Crazy Egg do? How do you use it? Give us the brief overview on Crazy Egg.
So Crazy Egg is a usability analytics tool where it can help you analyze your qualitative and quantitative data. You can do things like get user feedback. You can do things like run A/B tests. You can see where people are getting stuck on the page because they'll do heat maps. And you can use this data to figure out how you need to adjust the elements on your web page. And within Crazy Egg, there's a WYSIWYG editor where you can actually adjust the elements, and you can see if it's causing your conversion rates to go up or down.
Word. Thank you. This one's for everyone because I'm not aware of any, but audiences are such a big part of successful omni-channel marketing. Are there any AI tools that anyone has seen that can kind of assess a business's audience? Two people asked that same question. I'm not aware of any. I wasn't sure if you guys have seen anything.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific tool with a subscription, but just taking your first party data and adding it to some of the existing AI tools like ChatGPT can help analyze and, determine different performance pillars within your first party data. And then some of the tools that we've already talked about, like Crazy Eggs, are technically, AI tools, or the platforms themselves also have areas where you can leverage their reporting to determine what is resonating on each platform. So yeah, I guess that's a good question, in that I don't know any like silver bullet, but there's definitely a lot of different resources out there that you can leverage that are existing, and all the platforms are quickly adopting this and releasing new updates, especially as it relates to your own first party data.
Awesome.
You can also
Thank
flip
you so
it
much.
too. You can also flip it too, in which you can ask platforms like ChatGPT, based on your industry, the type of products you're selling, what are the ideal customers that they're seeing, because they'll scour the web and try to find that information for you, and that may give you an idea of what type of audience to target. And you may already be targeting that demographic, or you may not be, right? So you can go from there, but try asking these platforms that. What I've seen with audiences, it hasn't been perfect working with the AI platforms to figure out who's your audience when it's come to your website, because they don't have that data, and B, even when you ask them about a specific industry or product or service, what they think is the ideal customer, a lot of times it's off.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Neil, Chris, Sherry. Top of the hour. Great webinar. Thanks for everyone that joined. And that's all we've got time for.
And if you're looking for help, just hit us up at npdigital.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye all.
My name is Neil Patel, and I help companies generate more revenue through digital marketing. Entrepreneur Magazine said I was the #1 marketer in the world, and they also said I created one of the 100 most brilliant companies. I started my first website at the age of 16. I took all the money that I earned from working at an amusement park, and I paid a marketing firm. The marketing firm provided no results, and I quickly learned that I wasn't alone. Out of my frustration and from being broke, I had no choice but to learn marketing. My first client was a power supply manufacturer. I helped them generate another $25 million in sales, and from that point, I realized the power of marketing. I helped everyone that I could, and I built my reputation by being honest and over-delivering. I've helped companies like Google, NBC, Viacom, General Motors, eBay, but nothing's more satisfying than helping small business owners succeed. I founded 4 multi-million-dollar companies, and I've learned all the mistakes that you should avoid. I've written about them on Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc., Fast Company, and even on my own blogs. It's so awesome to know that colleges from all around the world are teaching my material in their classroom. Over the years, I've received awards from the President of the United States, the House of Representatives, and the United Nations. People believe marketing is expensive and difficult. Fortunately, that's not true. There is a formula. Even if you don't have a technical bone in your body, you can get results. And my mission is to share this formula with you.